In the summer of 1941, Navy seaman Dick Darden from Clinton, North Carolina, put in several requests to be transferred from Honolulu, where he was then stationed, to China, a more exciting assignment, or so his buddies told him. Instead, he was transferred to a little-known island in the Pacific. It would be the beginning of a long and horrible fight for his own survival. Jim Darden, Dick Darden's oldest son, wrote a book entitled Guests of the Emperor about Dick Darden's POW experience.
During September of that year, he was shipped out to Wake Island, which is a small island literally halfway between Honolulu and Tokyo. And he was a Navyman who was assigned to the 480-some Marines on that island.
On the same day the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor,
we interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air.
They attacked the airstrip at Wake Island.
My dad was wounded, and he and 20 other badly wounded men were put in a little concrete magazine, ammunition magazine, which had been converted to a hospital. And that's where he stayed the entire battle for 15 days during the Battle of Wake Island. He and those other wounded men were in this little concrete bunker.
4 months later, the Japanese moved POW Dick Darden from Wake Island to Osaka, Japan, to the #1 prison camp. There, he would remain for the next 3 years.
It was a slave labor camp. All of the men there, about 300 men in the camp, got up at about 6 in the morning. Their labors were sold to Mitsubishi, Sumitomo, some of the companies and industrial companies in Japan, and they went out from 6 in the morning till dark doing heavy labor, whatever that company wanted them to do.
Dick Darden was 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighed 235 pounds at the time of his capture. When he was finally liberated 3.5 years later, he would weigh 112 pounds.
They were fed 2 softball-sized balls of rice, according to my dad, each day, one in the morning, one at night. There was almost no meat in their diet. They were given very watery soup occasionally with maggots floating around on top of it. It was just a very sparse diet.
But like many POWs, Dick Darden found a way to survive.
He had to steal food to live, literally. If he'd not stolen food, he would have been far below the 112 pounds that he was at the end of the war, so he would have died almost surely, along with many other people.
The undernourished prisoners were regularly abused.
But it was just absolutely, according to him, and of course now we know that history points that out, that those Japanese were sadistic as hell. They were terrible.
On the day-to-day basis, the men were beaten. They were worked extraordinarily hard with almost no food, very little food. Many of the prisoners, the Wake Islanders who were sent to salt mines or iron foundries in China, literally were worked to death.
Others died in a more horrible fashion for meaningless crimes. One POW was caught stealing 10 cigarettes.
For whatever reason, this fella had seemed to have swiped 10 cigarettes someplace, and the Japanese caught him at it, and they made him, the Japanese, made the captured man dig his own grave and kneel over the grave. They chopped his head off, and the head dropped into the hole, and the body followed. And I said, good gosh.
Every single time for 4 years that he stole food, when he reached for the food, he thought about that head coming off and the fellow jumping in the hole.
Back home in Clinton, North Carolina, Dick Darden's mother had no idea as to the fate of her son.
They would give the prisoners letters. It was almost 2 years before any letter got out, and my grandmother knew whether her son had lived or died. She went quite a long time and didn't know where he was or if he died on Wake Island or if he was a prisoner or what.
Finally, after the formal surrender of the Japanese, some 45 months after they were taken prisoner on Wake Island, Dick Darden and the other prisoners at Osaka were liberated.
He just couldn't believe that finally, after 45 months, he was free. And they asked him, how do you want to go home? By ship or by airplane? He said, what's the fastest way to get back there? And they said, well, we got a cargo plane going out tomorrow. And he said, I want to be on it. And he was.
When Dick Darden returned home to Clinton, he ate voraciously, gaining 40 pounds during the 30-day leave. He married Edith Taylor, a local school teacher, and had 3 sons and a daughter. He got a job with the city and eventually became city manager of Clinton. According to Jim Darden, Dick Darden really never came to terms with his Japanese imprisonment until he began attending POW reunions.
I think he did come to terms with it, but I don't think it was until he actually vented his feelings to his friends and they to him, and the whole experience of the reunions, I think, went a long, long way toward doing that.
In addition to being active in the local POW associations, Dick Darden spoke several times to graduates of the Special Warfare School at Fort Bragg.
He would tell these fellows what it was like to be a prisoner of war in a very harsh setting, as they might expect in a Vietnam or perhaps in the Middle East.
But his lasting camaraderie with his fellow Wake Island defenders provided the elderly Dick Darden with pride and consolation. He died in 2002 at the age of 79. How would Jim Darden like his father to be remembered?
Well, he was a hard-working guy. He was a patriot. He was not an officer, so I don't know that you call him a hero, but he was a hero to me. And when he came home from the war, as I said, he expected to be a part of society and work for his living, and he didn't want a free handout from anybody. And I think he was a patriotic, hard-working American. And that's simple, I know, but I think that's how he'd want to be remembered.